July 17th, 1944 at about 10:17, 18 p.m. Two explosions took place, 6 seconds apart. The first, a smaller one on the pier, and the second, a monstrous explosion that killed everyone within 1,000 feet. That was 320 service people, merchant marines, and civilian contractors. 390 plus serious injuries in the town of Port Chicago, which was a little less than a mile away from here. It's cataloged as the largest home front disaster of the World War II era.
Welcome to the Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial. Run by the National Park Service, this memorial pays tribute to the lives lost in one of the biggest home front disasters of World War II.
Well, behind me you'll see what's sometimes referred to as the Sac Joaquin River. This is where the California Delta pours into the San Francisco Bay, and it's also the site of the 1944 disaster that lost 320 men, what was then known as the Port Chicago Naval Weapons Station.
As Hitler's troops invaded Europe and the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, more troops were needed. This opened up opportunities for black men to join the U.S. Navy.
The United States Navy, who started out the war very much resistant to providing an integrated service branch. Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox even threatened to resign at the first suggestion. But due to some really pivotal agitation by members of the black community, notably A. Philip Randolph, as well as the president's wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, new space was made for the idea of black service people. Most of these young men were recruited out of the South, many of which were shipped here to Port Chicago to carry on the vital ordnance loading work that supplied our war campaign in the Pacific.
Port Chicago was a place where the inequalities were hard to overlook. The completed ships bound for the Pacific were loaded with munitions in Port Chicago. This dangerous work was done primarily by African American sailors, while white commanding officers supervised.
There are rumors of white officers gambling on who can make their boys work the fastest. There's definitely records of rewards and punishment for sailors loading faster than other sailors. Rewards of leave, punishment of withdrawn leave. So much so that long-standing rules of safety, as in loading one ship at a time at a pier, were cast aside for loading two ships at the same time. And that particular violation led to the magnitude of this disaster in 1944.
After the disaster and the trauma, sailors were denied 30-day survivor leave and sent back to work. Dangerous conditions still existed, and sailors refused to work under these conditions and under the same officers. Safety issues had not been fully addressed, and many of the sailors refused to load the munitions under the same dangerous conditions. 50 of them were court-martialed and charged with mutiny.
These black servicemen never usurped any command and made any effort to usurp command. They said they would follow any order but that order, and the order they were referring to was the order to load ordnance under these conditions with these supervisory constraints.
These sailors were demoted, given harsh sentences, including 15 years of hard labor, to be followed by dishonorable discharges. Thurgood Marshall, the future Supreme Court Justice, took up the cause, but to no avail. It was a double tragedy for those involved. Eventually, the sentences were reduced, and most of the sailors were given honorable discharges. The integration of the armed forces and the tragedy of Port Chicago set the stage for important social change: civil rights, workers' protection, and integration.